there is no better time to talk about domestic violence as now. It's something that's prevalent in our society, and it's something that touches so many women, so many homes. It breaks homes. A few weeks ago on Facebook, someone wrote an article about domestic violence. Unfortunately or fortunately, this person is from Nigeria. So our focus will be both in America, in the United States, and in Nigeria. This person talked about the causes of domestic violence and attributed that to women, that we caused it, or whoever the batterer is caused this domestic violence. That raised an outrage because A, it's wrong, his opinions are wrong, and B, that's not true. The victim, it's not the cause of the violence. That's number one. The reason we are talking about this is because it's something that's universal. The fact that this guy has this opinion does not make it right. There's a whole lot of people that share the same opinion, that think that because the woman is loud or pretty or talks back to her husband, that she created this violence. So I have such wonderful ladies here, experts in this field, to talk about it. So today we're going to discuss domestic violence, the cause, and the resources that you have as a woman or as a man, because sometimes men are also battered. So we'll talk about that. Just remember that the leading cause of death in the world today is, for women, is domestic violence. There's a statistics that says that the Afghanistan war went from 2001 to 2011 or 2012, and about 6,500 people died. In the same amount of time, about 12,000 women died of domestic violence. In the United States of America, every 9 seconds, a woman is battered. 1 out of every 4 women are battered, suffers from domestic violence. In Nigeria, I think the statistics is even higher, except that we don't document it, because we all in Nigeria, we crowded, we are ashamed of it, so nobody reports it. That said, about 1 out of every 3 Nigerian women has been battered. So without much ado, please, we want you to listen to all this, because it's going to be a long series, but we'll get help, we'll get the meaning of domestic violence. So I'm going to introduce my wonderful speakers, the panelists, and I'm just going to sit back and have them talk about it, because they know this and they live it, because they practice in this field. So I have my wonderful sisters who are so talented and they practice in this field. Mrs. Amaka Akudinobi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'll come back and have each and every one introduce themselves and give you their background. Miss Jackie Grimble. So gorgeous. And my sister here, Miss Christy Egwonye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's start by having each and every one of you introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of background about your knowledge of domestic violence and what domestic violence means to you, or what it is, because it doesn't matter what it means to you, it's what it is, correct? So Amaka, can we start with you?
Hello everyone, my name is Amaka Akudinobi. I'm a California licensed attorney. I've practiced law in the state of California since 1994. Cannot believe it's been that long. 28 plus years.
Okay.
And so my area of practice, I focus really on family law. 80% of my practice area is family law. So obviously with that area, but what I call it the fudge, I've had to deal with a lot of women and sometimes men too, that have been victims of domestic violence. It's a very prevalent thing in our society.
Yes.
And so that's basically my area and why I do understand what domestic violence is all about. It's obviously a control issue, and sometimes it's more than control. It's a matter of power, who has more authority over the other.
Right.
So those are the things, and that's basically the brief definition of what domestic violence is all about.
So I'm going to be sitting back because they have all the knowledge. So I'm just going to be sitting here and looking pretty. But before we move on to Jackie, you're also the president of a woman organization.
Yes, I'm also the current president of Anambra State Women Association. It's an association of women from Anambra State in Nigeria. We have over 170 members, and our association is based out here in Southern California.
And you've also participated in the UN.
Yes,
I have to get all her credentials so you know where she's
knows,
from.
Yeah, I've participated in the UN, CSW, I believe 2 years ago, and I intend to go again next year. And for me, it's very important that every woman should have the opportunity to do that.
So she's in a very good position to talk about the US as well as Nigeria. And on my left side is the beautiful, gorgeous Jackie Grimble. Jackie, tell us a little bit about yourself and about domestic violence. I see you have this cheat sheet here because this is such an important topic, right?
It is a very important topic. First, I thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Appreciate it. And hello, everybody. I don't consider myself an expert in the field, but I know a little bit about domestic violence, both personally and professionally. Probably about, well, I won't say how many years ago, I'll age myself.
Don't date yourself, yeah.
But when I first got married, I was married to a batterer, and I was a victim of domestic violence. And so for me, I had to escape the cycle of abuse. And in the process of doing that, I began to learn about the whole process or the whole cause of domestic violence. And I became empowered by, as I said, escaping. I literally took my 3 babies, put them in a car, and headed out the door and got away from my abuser. Just an aside, we were able to talk about it a few years later, and he profusely asked for forgiveness and apologized, and things were fine. But I went on from there to become so empowered and understanding of the whole domestic violence situation that I became a marriage and family therapist. And started working with people in the field of domestic violence, mainly with the perpetrators. What happens when a man does domestic violence, he and it becomes knowledgeable in terms of the court system. They have to attend a 52-week mandated course. And in the process of that, and I taught those courses, and in the process of that, their whole mentality regarding domestic violence changes. And so I taught those classes for several years, and also have worked with victims of domestic violence. But we'll talk more about that as we get into it, and I know that you still want to go ahead.
But that's why she's been doing this in the US. And we've convinced her that she's going to go with us to Africa, Nigeria in particular, to help us deal with this situation.
Absolutely.
So she's great. She's full-blood American. So thank you, Jackie, for agreeing to do that.
It's a global problem.
It's a global problem. Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy Egoyen. I'm a nurse. I'm also a holistic health coach. I want to put that holistic part.
Holistic.
So I'm a holistic health coach, and I'm also a minister of the gospel. So even as we talk about domestic violence here, I will want to talk about the role of the church in domestic violence, especially back where we come from, most of us in Nigeria, how the church has help or enable or look at women that have been involved in domestic violence, how the church have dealt with these issues with the man and the woman that is the victim, how the pastors have been dealing with these issues all this while. Because when we talk of domestic violence, I know it's a matter of control, issue and power on the part of the person that is the abuser, but also at the other end, we look at these men that are very insecure. They have a complex about themselves, So the nearest person to them, it's their wife. That is the person they wake up in the morning and see. That is the last person they see before they go to bed. So everything about them, they take it on this woman. They take it on their wives. They have a complex. They have anger issue with something in their life that they're not able to deal with, and they take it on the wife. They don't know how to deal with it, so they begin to abuse their wives.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So we're going to have to come back to it, the causes of the domestic violence. But what I will want us to do is, in a nutshell, tell our audience what domestic violence is.
Domestic violence is on behalf of the perpetrator.
So by perpetrator is the abuser.
The abuser. On behalf of the abuser is an attempt to gain or maintain power and control over his situation, over his life, and his life includes a wife and children, and things aren't going the way that he needs or wants for them to go, then he will use abuse to contain or maintain that power and control. In my personal situation, I was the breadwinner. I was the main breadwinner for my family. And as she just alluded to, my ex-husband that gave him some self-esteem issues.
Yeah, which we see, which is very rampant in our community,
yes.
right? Yeah,
yes.
Very rampant. Yeah.
And so that, along with other things, and then trying to control his environment, and seeing me as an empowered woman, it was a difficult situation for him to deal with. So he used abuse to try to maintain his power and authority over me. It's all about power and control.
So it's all about power and control, right? So yes. Maka, do you think that, I know we all talk about women, but men do get abused, correct?
Men do get abused, but there's something I want to point out before we move on into who the victim is here. Domestic violence occurs both in marital situations and non-marital. Non-marital, I mean boyfriend, girlfriends. So that we need to kind of make our younger ones aware of this situation. It's not only when the person has put a ring on it or when you've said I do. It happens to young girls in college, young girls in high school, young boys in college. So it's a cycle. And most of the people that abuse, like Christy pointed out, are dealing with very personal issues that they haven't dealt with before. So both men get abused and women also get abused. But statistically, it's obvious that more women get abused than more men.
Yeah.
So that's
I think the statistics is like 1 in 7 men probably.
But I want to point something out too, that domestic violence is very prevalent in the LGBT community as well.
Yes.
Right. So it goes across color, age, race, everything. It's like you mentioned, it's a global problem,
it's
right?
It's a global problem.
Okay.
Yes.
So Christy, do you have anything to add about what this domestic violence is?
I mean, we call it different names, intimate partner.
Right. I was going to ask what that one is, because there's also the intimate partner violence.
Yes, it's still the same name.
The same name.
Yes, still the same thing as domestic violence. Anybody you are intimately involved with. Okay. And then an abuse happens, then that is like she said, boyfriend, girlfriend. Young people, and they need to realize that once it starts. It's good that it's actually starting early before he puts a ring on it, because if he puts a ring on it, then you should walk away that early. Yes, if you're young, don't. Even if it is emotional abuse, he's talking down on you every time. So as we get on, we'll look at the signs. There are always obvious signs that we ignore. That somebody's going to be an abuser. It's always
and let's look at it. When we talk about domestic violence, a lot of people think we're simply talking about the physical abuse. So understand that domestic violence is physical.
Yeah, and it could be psychological.
It's actually sexual. Yes. And I always like to add, it's also financial.
Right. Yes. So I was going to
those are all aspects, in my opinion.
Very correct. So, but what I was going to say is, like, for the sake of this discussion that we're having, so when we see domestic violence, we want it to cover
Physical?
all physical, whether it's intimate partner, whether if it's boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. So we're just going to put, for just the sake of this discussion, call all of them domestic violence. And you brought a good point, you know, because there's physical abuse and then there's psychological abuse. I don't think that there's really a concrete evidence out there, but there are some studies that show that the psychological abuse could be as damaging as the physical abuse.
It actually was. I've had the opportunity to attend some conferences, and I remember specifically one of the speakers talk about the psychological abuse. It's actually, call it psychological, emotional, all come under the same umbrella.
Right.
It's actually more difficult to heal from that.
Right.
Because that's a voice, a constant voice in your head.
That's in your head.
That, you know, it's very difficult for victims to actually get rid of.
Right.
What happens, excuse me, with emotional abuse is that one of the partners, the abuser, starts putting the other person down and starts to, you know, talk her down or him down, starts to name call, starts to, in every way, abuse this person.